Hello everyone, welcome to valuetrainings.com. So now let's see how to identify the elements with Selenium WebDriver, how Selenium works and how it is able to identify various elements on the web page like buttons, text box, radio button, checkboxes, links and all. Alright, so the answer to that is Selenium works on the page source. For example, if we go to any website, say I go to bbc.com and I go to the page source of this website. So over here you see that you have various tags and attributes present on this page source. And with the help of this tags and attributes, with the help of these tags and attributes, we actually identify the objects. And on this Selenium works and it identifies the elements on the web page. Alright, so now let's discuss about the page source. Now out here inside this page source you have various tags and attributes. Now what are these tags and attributes? For example, we have an anchor tag over here. Anchor tag represents the link on the web page, and every tag can have multiple attributes associated with it. For example, this anchor tag has one of the attribute as ID. Then there is also a class attribute and the href attribute associated with this anchor tag. Right. So based on these tags and attributes, Selenium works and it identifies the element on the web page. Now there can be a tag name and multiple attributes with that tag as we have seen over here. Alright. So now how Selenium works and how it identifies the elements on the basis of these tags and attributes, let's discuss that. Alright, so in order to understand that, we'll make an Excel file. Say I make an Excel file, object identification, which will actually categorize the elements on the web page. Okay, so out here, say I have the fields objects, then you have the tag name as one of the field, then you have mandatory attributes, and we have the optional attributes. Okay, right. So now over here in this Excel sheet, say suppose now what all objects can you see on the web page? What all are the different types of objects on the web page? For example, we have an object, say we have text field on the web page, right? And then also you have another component, another object that you usually see on the web page is the buttons. Then we have radio buttons, right? Then we have the checkbox with us. Checkbox is also there. Alright, then again we have the links. Links is also one of the object, one of the element that you usually see on the web page. Alright, and then we have image. Image is also there. And then what else you see on the web page? Okay, so for example, like we also have the drop down. So drop down is also there on the web page, right? So these are some of the most frequently used elements on the web page that you usually see on any web page, the most common elements on the web page. All right. Okay, so now say suppose we need to identify, we need to check how can we identify these elements on the web page. So what you need to do is, like, first of all you need to, in your Firefox, you need to install an extra plugin in the Firefox, that is Firebug. Okay, so you just open your Firefox browser and then you simply search for the Firebug plugin. We'll talk about Chrome and IE as well, but let me talk about the Firebug in Firefox first of all, because you cannot go to the page source every time to identify the elements on the page source. Okay, because to identify the elements on the page source, it's a little tough in the in the case of Chrome and the IE browser. So Firebug will make your work a little easier. We'll just see. Okay, so what we do is, say like I open the first link, and make sure you open it in Firefox browser only. This is a plugin only for the Firefox browser. Okay, and then out here you simply click on this add to Firefox, this button over here, and it will be added as a plugin in your Firefox browser. You just click on the install button and it has been successfully installed in your Firefox browser. Okay, so it has been installed, and then out here you see that once it is installed, you get an icon over here in the top menu having the icon of the Firebug. I simply click on this icon and you get a window opening up over here. Now in the HTML tab out here, you will see the HTML page source, and can even see the you can even see this small arrow icon over here. If I click on this arrow icon, and then if I move my mouse to any location, to any area, it will give you the page source of that particular element on the page, on the web page. For example, if I go to my Gmail website, okay, and say I go to gmail.com website. Now out here, say suppose if I take my mouse to anywhere on the web page, it will simply give you the page source of that particular element. Okay, so this will make your work easier. If you have to inspect any element on the web page, you can easily inspect it with the help of this Firebug plugin. Okay, now say for example, if you want to identify the objects in the Chrome browser, then in that case you can use the Chrome inspector window. You don't have to install an extra plugin in the Chrome browser. For example, if out here I go to Gmail. Okay, I go to my Gmail web page. Alright, so now like over here, say suppose if I need to inspect this username text field. Okay, right, so what you do is you simply, like if you want to investigate any link on the web page, any element on the web page, so in the Chrome browser the inspector is already inbuilt. You simply right click on any of the element you want to inspect, and then we select this option, inspect option, and then the Chrome inspector window will open up with the page source of that particular element that is highlighted. Okay, and out here as well we have an arrow over here in the Chrome inspector window as well, and then you just move your mouse anywhere to any location, to any element you want to inspect, and it will give you the page source of that particular element. Alright, okay, and then in the IE browser, say suppose if I open my IE browser, alright, and say if you want to identify the elements on this IE browser, then say like what you will do is you will like simply hit the F12 button from the keyboard, and then you will find an IE inspector window. Okay, so IE developer tool will come up if you simply hit the F12 button from the keyboard, and over here as well you have an arrow which will help you to identify any element on the web page, similar to what we have seen in the Chrome browser as well as in the Firefox browser. So in the IE browser, also you simply have to hit the F12 button and it will open up the this IE inspector tool, which will help you to identify the objects on the web page. But what we do is we don't actually do it like this. We just investigate in the Firefox browser only, and we don't need to do it separately in almost in all the browsers, in all the three browsers, Chrome, IE and the Firefox. We simply do it in the Firefox browser only. It is because like the page source of the website remains same across all the browsers. Right, page source will not change which you are investigating. This is the response from the server which will not change. Right, so page source, since we all know that if we go to the page source, it remains same across all the browsers. So no need to change, no need to check the no need to identify the elements in all the browsers. If you investigate in the Chrome, IE or the Firefox, you will get the same page source. Right, so what we prefer in Selenium is that we identify in the Firefox browser only with the help of this Firebug plugin, which is easy to work with. And you can implement that across different browsers. You don't have to investigate the same element across different browsers. Right. Okay, so now coming back to our Excel sheet over here. So the first object is the text field. Now what is the tag associated with this text field? Well, the tag name associated with this text field is the input tag. You have the input tag associated with every text box that you see on the web page. Alright, and then coming to the next object, that is the button. So with the button also you have a tag, that is the input tag. Similarly for the radio buttons also we have an input tag, and for the check boxes also we have an input tag. Right, but the mandatory attributes, they will differ for all the different objects that we have. Now in the case of text field, you will like always find the attribute, the mandatory attribute will be type is equal to email, or it might be type is equal to text. So these are the like either it might be type is equal to email or type is equal to text in the case of the text field. Okay, so type attribute varies in the case of the text field, and similarly in the case of button, the mandatory attribute would be type is equal to button. It might be equal to type is equal to button, or it might be type is equal to submit. Okay, so you see that this type attribute is varying in the case of the text field and the buttons. You will always find type attribute in the text box and the buttons. Alright, now for the radio buttons. So well, the mandatory attribute associated with the radio button is you will find the attribute that is type is equal to radio. In the case of radio buttons, we have the type is equal to radio as the mandatory attribute, and for the checkbox we have type is equal to checkbox. Okay, right. So these are some of the mandatory attribute which will always be present. With these elements on the web page. Now in the case of link, the tag name associated is the anchor tag. Okay, and you will always find the attribute that is the href attribute, which will point towards the URL which opens up when you click on any link on the web page. So mandatory attribute is the href attribute associated with the link. Alright, and tag name is the anchor tag. Now coming to the image. So with the image, the tag name is the img tag, and the mandatory attribute is the src attribute, which will point towards the URL from which that image is loading. Okay, so it will always be there, the src attribute associated with the image element. And for the drop down, you have the tag name as the select, which will have various options inside it. And for the drop down, we don't have any mandatory attribute. There is no mandatory attribute with the drop down. Okay, and then there are some optional attributes as well, like for example you have the optional attribute as name, id and class. So these can be present with any element on the web page. Alright, so if an element is having id, name or class, if an element is having id, name or class, it becomes easy to work with it. But not every element would have it. Only the major elements might have these attributes, name, id and class. So that means optional attributes means they might or might not be present with any element. So based on these all things, based on the tag name, mandatory attribute and the optional attributes, the combination of all these criterias, we will identify the elements on the web page. So now how do we identify the elements with all these? Let's look into that. Alright, so we'll take an example. We'll see. I'll just open up my Visual Studio and we'll make a simple Visual Studio project in which we'll see how can we identify the elements on the web page. Okay, so I create a console application. Say I create an application identifying the elements. Okay, so this is your project, and inside this project, first of all, I'll just include my Selenium DLLs so that we can work with the Selenium code, right? So what you do is you right click on your references folder, select add reference, and then I'll browse to my location where I have my Selenium DLLs. That is, I'll include my Selenium 3.0 DLLs. All these DLLs, I'll just add them in my project. Okay, so now we will make a simple script which will help you take you to the gmail.com web page, and will try to log you in by entering the username and the password. Okay, so we'll just look into that. Alright, so we have our Visual Studio project with us. Okay, and we have included the Selenium DLLs inside our project, and we have this program.cs class file with us which contains the main method inside it. Alright, right, so now inside this, first of all, I'll invoke my Firefox browser. Right, so you create the object of your Firefox driver service. I press Ctrl plus dot and will include the reference to this class Firefox driver service, which is coming from openqa.selenium.firefox. Okay, and I say Firefox driver service is equal to Firefox driver service dot create default service, and inside this you need to pass the path of your gecko-driver.exe file. Alright, so we'll just include the path of our gecko-driver.exe file, which is out here. This is my path, and I give the name of my file, which is gecko-driver.exe. Okay, and then I'll put @ symbol before the path so that it automatically takes up the double slashes. Fine, and then with this service object, I will also set my Firefox binary path as well. That is the path of where I have installed my Firefox browser. So it's out here, Mozilla Firefox, and over here you have your firefox.exe file. And I include @ symbol. Fine, and then I will open my Firefox browser, that is Firefox driver. Say driver is equal to new Firefox driver, and inside this I will pass my service object. Alright, and then what you say is you simply say driver.url is equal to, you take it to the gmail.com web page. Fine. So this code will help you, it will take you to the Gmail home web page. Okay, but how will you identify the objects on this particular web page? We'll do that with the help of Firebug. Right. So out here, say like what we need to do is we need to enter the username inside this username text field. So like you have your text field over here. So now everything in Selenium is a web element. Now what is a web element? This text field is a web element. This button is a web element. The link is a web element. Everything that you see on the web page is considered as a web element in Selenium. For example, say if I go to the official website of Selenium, which is seleniumhq.org website. Out here, if I go to my C# documentation, API docs of C#, now out here you will find an interface, that is iWeb element interface. Now if I go to this web element interface, this interface, what it says, this interface represents an HTML element on the web page. It represents an HTML element and has got various functions which you can perform on any element on the web page. For example, click function to click on any of the element. If you want to clear the content of any element, then you have the clear function. If you want to get the location of any element, if you want to check whether the element is enabled or if it is disabled, if that element is displayed or not. Okay, right. So you've got various functions which you can fire on any element on the web page. Alright, and if I consider my another interface, WebDriver interface. So this WebDriver interface will always, you like inside this interface you will always find a function, this known as this find element function. This find element function, it finds the first web element using this find element function on the web page. Now what is this? For example, like all our driver classes, this Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, all our driver classes are implementing the web element interface. Okay, so in all the driver classes you will find the function find element function, and this find element function is based on a class known as the by class, and by class holds all the it holds the mechanism to locate the element on the web page, for example, like you have various criterias with which you can find the element. For example, the class name, if you have to find an element with the help of an ID, link text, partial link text, name, tag name, XPath. So various things you can do, like you can identify with various different criterias that all comes under this by class. Alright, so now let's see. For example, if I have, say like I have my code with me. Now for example, now what you will do is you simply say driver dot find element, say by, and this by class is there in openqa.selenium, right? And then say suppose I want to find it with the ID. So by dot ID is, now what is the ID of your username text field? That is, the ID is equal to email for this username text field, right? So if you want to find your element with this ID, that is, I want to find my element with the ID whose value is email. Alright, and then if you look into your documentation, if you look into your web element interface, out here you see that this find element, this function, it always, like you find element function, it returns you the reference of the web element interface. It finds the first web element interface and it returns you the reference of this web element interface. So what we will do is we will simply write over here that this driver.findElement, this findElement function is returning us the reference of the web element interface. And what you want to do with this web element, this email, you want to type into this email. So you simply fire the send keys function inside it. Say I want to write Selenium into it. Okay, so you simply say email dot send the keys with Selenium. So send keys function is used to type something into the text field. Alright, okay, so now if I run my code, say suppose I'll just build my solution. Alright, and then if you run your code, so it will open up the Firefox browser. Hold on. Right, so you see it opens up the Firefox browser and will take you to the Gmail web page, and you see that it types Selenium into the username text field. Alright, so this is how you can find the element on the web page. And then one more thing, if we look into the documentation, if I go to my find element function, say if I go to my find, okay, so find element function over here, if you carefully look into it, it says that it finds the first web element using the given method. So as soon as, like, if say suppose you have multiple elements on the web page, so find element method, it will always find the first element on the web page. As soon as it gets the first element, it will just use that web element and will work with that particular web element only. Alright, so now like for example, like say suppose now next what you need to do is you need to click on this next button. Okay, so what you will do is say like if I inspect this next button, this next button is having the ID as next, right? So out here after entering into the username text field, I have to find my next button, say driver dot find the element by the ID is next. Okay, and this will give us the web element, web element, say next button it is, and with this next button what you want to do, you want to okay, it is next button dot, what you want to do, you want to simply click on this next button, so it will simply click on that next button, right? So now if I run my code again, so it opens up the Firefox browser, goes to the Gmail web page, and then you see it enters Selenium into the text field and clicks on the next button as well. Right, and then like you can do this whole stuff in one single line as well. For one element, like you are writing two different lines of code for one set of web element. Okay, that is driver dot first. In the first line you are finding the element, and in the second line you are performing the operation what you want to do with that element. Alright, so or else what you can do is you can simply write the complete code in one single line only, that is you say driver dot find the element by dot ID is email, and what you want to do with this email field, you want to enter into the email field. You simply fire the send keys function and inside this you enter your data. Okay, so I can simply comment this code. Okay, and similarly we can do with the next button as well, that is driver dot find element by dot ID. What is the ID? Next is the ID, and I say dot click on that. Okay, so execution starts from the left hand side. First the web element would be extracted, and on that web element the send keys function would be fired or the click function would be fired. Right?